I think Caitlin Clark is already one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time, purely for the fact of what she has done on the court and also the kind of eyeballs that she has brought to a sport that really never had this kind of fame behind it, this kind of fandom behind it.
After winning 2024 Athlete of the Year, Caitlin Clark found herself at the center of a media frenzy because it seems that some people find it too difficult to talk openly about privilege and race. You know, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around because I'm so focused and competitive, and I love the game, I love playing, and I love being in front of the fans, but over the course of probably the last 2.5 years, after her Time magazine interview went live, the backlash poured in, with critics jumping on every word she said. However, instead of giving up, Clark stood her ground, and what followed was a wave of support from some of the most legendary figures in sports, including LeBron James, Serena MJ, and others. It's like the sports world's version of the Avengers coming together, and trust me, they weren't. The reason Caitlin Clark found herself at the center of a media firestorm was not because of her record-breaking performances or her signature three-point shots, but rather because she had the audacity to be competitive, which is apparently a crime when you're a woman. The backlash was as swift as it was absurd, with critics rushing to paint her as a villain for simply doing this. I feel like you have had to respond to more questions than anyone else regarding the intersectionality of race, gender, and sexuality in sports. Competing with passion is what athletes do best. I'm very focused and competitive, and I love the game I play and being in front of the fans. However, during the last 2 to 3 years, things have changed somewhat, and now it's difficult to get a ticket whether we're at home or on the road. And right when the clamor from her detractors reaches a fever pitch in a daring and revolutionary interview with Time magazine, Caitlin Clark did what she does best. She took charge of the story. In a world where accountability is frequently disregarded, she dared to admit that her success wasn't just due to her unwavering work ethic, but also to the privileges she was born with. If you thought that was the end of it, buckle up, because Clark wasn't stopping. She was named Athlete of the Year for 2024 and dropped a bombshell that sent the media and the world into a frenzy. She feels the need to acknowledge her white privilege, essentially saying, "I'm sorry I'm white." Maya Moore was my favorite player there. I understand what this league is about, and as I mentioned before, it has only been there for 25 years, so I know there have been many incredible black women in it, and I believe it is crucial to keep encouraging them. Using her position to raise awareness, Clark recognized the crucial role that black athletes like Maya Moore had in establishing the WNBA and how their contributions helped the league reach its current state. I couldn't have predicted that Caitlin Clark's Time magazine interview would cause so much controversy and that the world wasn't sure how to react to her. While some saw her words as a welcome change and an athlete who wasn't afraid to take on difficult topics head-on, others weren't prepared for this conversation and reacted angrily. The WNBA players couldn't stand her for being white, which is blatantly racist. Enter the media Megyn Kelly, a mogul, who wasted no time criticizing Clark for her remarks, but did Caitlin Clark back down? No. She doubled down, reaffirming that her accomplishments were earned, while also acknowledging the systemic injustices that exist. Her message was clear: when you're making history, it's important to block out negativity, and that's exactly what she intended to do. Meanwhile, the backlash continued to grow, but so did her army of supporters. Co-owner of the Washington Mystics, Sheila Johnson, openly chastised Time for highlighting Clark as. However, despite the criticism, Clark's peers came together to support her, and her former coach and teammates stood by her side, praising her leadership and honesty. It's not Caitlin Clark's fault that she's a generational talent. Let's face it, the only people I really care about are the people I love, my teammates, my coaches, the people in our locker room, the people I see every single day, and I know they have my best interests at heart as well. Regarding privilege and race, one thing I love about her is that she's making her sport more popular. Don't get it wrong, don't get it up. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about the larger discussion that dealt with representation, equity, and the future of women's sports. Many fantastic things are about to happen for the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. LeBron James is a member of basketball royalty and an expert in managing criticism. When LeBron entered the fray, he not only provided assistance, but also silenced Clark's detractors. In typical LeBron fashion, he followed up his now famous tweet denouncing the absurd double standards with an Instagram story that was equal parts savage and supportive. He praised Clark's competitive fire and made it clear that she was being unfairly judged, even drawing a comparison between the backlash she faced in his early NBA days. Caitlin Clark deserves every award she has received this season, whether it be in the WNBA or elsewhere. She plays basketball like it's meant to be played quickly, intensely, and without apology. She doesn't ask for permission, and she doesn't care about archaic double standards. When people couldn't handle his confidence, either translation was there. Instead of portraying her as the antagonist, reviewers used her as a representation of what athletics should be: unadulterated, intense, and without filtering. I think it's crucial to just keep doing what she's doing. And when Serena Williams entered the conversation about Caitlin Clark, it wasn't just another sports icon weighing in. It was Serena freaking Williams, the most dominant player in tennis history, who has survived more media storms than most athletes could. I love that she tries to stay grounded and explains that she doesn't have a social media account and doesn't look at it. Enough was enough, and when Serena talks, it's not just words, it's a generational experience. However, Serena made the connection between racism, sexism, and how women, particularly women of color, are policed in sports. She pointed out how Clark's confidence was framed as arrogance, a narrative she has fought throughout her career, and her voice resonated far beyond basketball and tennis, forcing even non-sports media to take notice. When Caitlin Clark found herself under fire, Michael Jordan shocked everyone by making a statement, a move so uncommon that it made headlines on its own for Jordan, because he doesn't care about public opinion and has famously avoided social and political controversies throughout his career. There are outlets to consider the reasons behind the backlash against Clark, and anyone who does anything to this young woman for what she's brought to the game should be suspended and fined heavily for doing so. The media's criticism of Clark struck close to home, reminding him of how he was once labeled too demanding and intense during his Chicago Bulls reign. His support reframed Clark as a true competitor in the MJ mold, not as a controversial figure. Veterans will test you accurately, and if they feel that you've received more money or publicity, you know they're upset about that. If the media backlash against Caitlin Clark was intense, the real war happened. On social media, athletes like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and even retired legends like Dwayne Wade into the fray, firing off tweets that were equal parts defense and blazing clapbacks in a virtual arena, where trolls and sports icons faced off in real time. The entire saga turned into an epic social media event in which the athletes themselves controlled the narrative, the trolls lost, the supporters joined together, and Caitlin Clark emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. Many of these individuals had this really powerful. Even ESPN analysts, who are typically poker-faced, stats-obsessed professionals, couldn't help but break character when basketball royalty starts weighing in. For years and years, men have been complaining that ESPN doesn't cover sports, rather, they cover it. Legendary coaches like Gino Ora and Don Staley didn't just comment, they commanded the conversation like they were in a fourth-quarter huddle with the championship on the line. People watch sports as a form of escape to see competition, and they're tired of the critical race theory. Their believability made their remarks more impactful than a half-court buzzer beater. These aren't just Twitter celebrities seeking likes. They are well-known sports voices with decades of expertise and accolades. Their backing elevated the discussion above hashtags and memes, solidifying it in sports history books. You guys need to take a look at some of these people's viewpoints and stop debating them. I would. I would much rather argue with a wall than attempt to counter some of these people's arguments online. What began as a basketball controversy evolved into a full-fledged cultural movement, with everyone asking, wait a minute, why are we so weird about confident women? Then discussions erupted. I love basketball, and it has given me so many wonderful things, and that will likely always be my first passion and everything I enjoy. Hopefully, after basketball is over, I'll still be able to pursue my passions and eventually run a sports team. Despite everything, Caitlin Clark remains unwavering. I'm here to play basketball, she said, like a pro who had been dealing with this kind of heat her entire career. It was a masterclass in grace under fire, and it worked. Seal it. She avoided Twitter tirades and defensive interviews in favor of focusmination in her few public statements. Personally, I think it's unique to watch those young boys and girls that carry signs or with their parents or friends, since it's a memory they will cherish forever. What's the true effect of all this, for starters? I recall my very first WNBA game. These days, Caitlin Clark's career is all but guaranteed. Despite critics' attempts to downplay her, she ended up receiving primetime spotlight because of every headline, social media post, and impassioned speech from sports luminaries. However, it wasn't just about Caitlin, it was also about the powerful precedent that her story set for future athletes, especially young women who know they can play fierce, bold, and refuse to apologize for it. The next generation of female athletes will take the court knowing that they belong, and Caitlin Clark's influence on younger athletes is enormous. Who knew that being unapologetic, fiercely competitive, and speaking your mind could inspire a generation? I mean, forget the old play nice mentality. Young athletes no longer have to sit in the corner and silently obey the rules. Caitlin is out there educating the next generation of athletes that it's cool to genuinely care about winning and that displaying emotion is not a crime. Caitlin Clark is more than just a basketball phenomenon. She is a revolution, both on and off the court. When naysayers attempted to box her in, she blasted them, saying, "Get loud, get proud, and take no prisoners. The world is watching, kids, so time to step up or sit down."